Hello, movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, the podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are kind of going to stick in the Halloween theme. Halloween is coming up a little bit, but I thought we would give it a little bit of a twist because I know right now there is sort of this kerfuffle happening around Snow White between kind of the Snow White Disney remake version, which no one seems to be interested in, and then the Daily Wire, I know, just dropped like a promotional trailer for their version of Snow White that is coming out the exact same, basically the same year. And theirs is Snow White and the Evil Queen. So I feel like they're going more the Grimm's fairy tale version, which made me think of my favorite version of Snow White. And I thought we would talk about it because it does sort of keep with that Halloween theme. I think this would be a really great one to watch around Halloween or on Halloween itself. And it is, of course, like I said, my favorite version of Snow White. So the movie that I am talking about is Snow White, A Tale of Terror. Now, this one came out in like 1996. I want to say I was 14 or 15 around the time that this came out. So that definitely, please keep that in mind as I'm explaining like some of the elements of this that I really, really enjoyed. But this one stars Sigourney Weaver, Sam Neill, Gil Bellows, Monica Keena. There are a lot of people in this that I feel like probably were either getting their starts in their career or like Sigourney Weaver and Sam Neill were pretty already heavily entrenched in that career and were kind of just doing something a little bit more fun. So Snow White, A Tale of Terror, I would say falls more along the lines of like the Grimm fairy tales kind of version. I don't think it follows the story perfectly, but this is not going to be like a Disney telling of it. Like there are a lot of elements to Snow White, A Tale of Terror that are a lot more disturbing. I wouldn't say necessarily scary, but they are darker, more disturbing. It's a lot more like of a tragic tale as opposed to Disney's, which is a lot more like light and airy and sweet. This one, Sigourney Weaver plays Lady Claudia, who is essentially the evil queen of the movie. And I love her performance. I think she does an absolutely amazing job. The sort of mirror on the wall element is this armoire that she has that is kind of passed down from her mother. The magic element sort of comes from that as well. And there are like quite a few magic elements to this in terms of what Sigourney Weaver's character is able to do and kind of her reach. And she definitely has more of that like witchy feel to it. And then when the evil queen actually transitions to that old woman that gives, Snow White the apple that was poisoned, they did that in this film as like practical makeup effects, keeping Sigourney Weaver. So none of it, obviously, because it's 1997, none of it is CGI or done in that way at all. It's all practical makeup effects. And the way that she looks is just so creepy and so cool. And I love it. And the story itself, I would kind of categorize this one more so along the feel of like Ever After. But if Ever After, that movie with Drew Barrymore that was like the Cinderella retelling, if that was like disturbing and had more darker elements, I would say Snow White, A Tale of Terror falls kind of in that sort of realm. The prince is sort of done a little bit differently here. Like this to me, I feel like is more of that modern quote unquote retelling without actually taking anything away from the story itself. So like the 7 dwarves are men. They're like essentially sort of bandits, I feel like, or the poorer element of this particular town that they're in. So Snow White's father essentially is like the lord of the town, and then the 7 dwarves would be more so like serfs, people that were under them, people that were living on their land that have had terrible things happen to them. And they're not all dwarves. I think only one of them is actually played by a little person, one of the characters. That doesn't take away for me from the story. I think it kind of makes more sense in terms of they're just like this ragtag group of men that have come together more on circumstance than anything. So they sort of updated that quite well, in my opinion. And then just the story overall is quite great. I really love like the darker elements of this, and I really love kind of how the story progresses and how it's told. The only thing that I don't particularly care for with this telling is the character of Liliana, or the character of Snow White. When she is older, when the story sort of gets going, I feel like I empathize more so with the evil queen than I do with Snow White, because I think that Snow White is really bratty. Like, she's just really sort of selfish and bratty and petulant. And though she does sort of learn better along her sort of trials, once, it's not so much the huntsman in this. I don't want to give too much of it away, but like the huntsman element that sort of takes her away from her family and whatnot, that sort of teaches her a little bit along the way, where I feel like she does come out as a better character on the other side. But I don't necessarily think that she comes out like particularly great. And I don't like the fact that really a lot of the things that sort of lead to the story even happening in the first place are more so because she's just a spoiled brat than because the queen is evil. So I don't see like Sigourney Weaver's evil queen character as just being completely evil. I consider her like a nice character that's sort of driven to evil things because of circumstances that happen throughout the film. But it is one of the things that I like, because it's like you can sort of see the other side of it. Whereas in like Disney Snow White, for instance, it's just an evil queen and you don't get any of those elements of like her motivations or why she's doing what she's doing. But this one for me is just, it's so fun. It's such a great time to sit and watch. I very much enjoyed it. I very much love like Gil Bellows, who is in this movie, who kind of plays the sort of love interest, not the prince, but kind of an additional love interest. And I very much enjoyed his character. My 15-year-old self like had the worst ever crush on his character, and he is one of like the 7 dwarves, or like the 7 men that she kind of finds in the woods, and I really loved like their back and forth. So yeah, I don't know, I really think that it's just a good, fun, sort of creepy retelling of Snow White, and I would highly recommend it for around Halloween time if you want something that's a little bit darker and a little bit spooky. So those are my thoughts on Snow White, A Tale of Terror. I would love to know what you guys think if you have seen this one. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.